slash animation when your character's not really doing that much. I kind of like lumped it all together. So some things we'll be talking about at different times. We'll be talking stuff that's a little bit more moving hold, others about just sort of your characters sitting there doing nothing, but they kind of like intertwine and mingle together. So I tried to like break things down into different things that I find myself either doing, utilizing, or considering when I have a character not really doing anything. And the four things are momentum, breathing, eye darts, and head support. And this is very much more for moving holds than anything else. And we have these moving holds that don't take into consideration the previous movement and the movement to come. They just kind of float around and move, and the pixels drift around, and they have, yes, pixel drift, but it does not take any thought or care into what happened before, what's going to happen. So for a moving hold, making sure that the drift follows the direction of the most recent sort of momentum shift. So if you have a character that just eases in, we want to think about, you know, where was that coming from in that direction, which the energy was flowing last. So if it overshoots and settles, goes to my right, I guess your guys is left in the camera view, goes this way, but then shoots back, settles back. Now the direction is going this way, not that way, because of that overshoot. And so that's the direction in which you're going to want to push through and extend through your moving hold. And when you're thinking about this, try and keep it like a simple rotation and direction. So try not to just do one or the other. Like if you just have rotations, it's going to feel weird. And if you just have translations, it's also going to feel weird. So you want to marry the both, but try and keep it to like, you know, if you can keep it to just one axis, like one, like rotate X and translate Y, just rotating up and translating up, then that one keeps it simple for you, and two, can help with avoiding overcomplicated floating movements. So another thing to think about with moving holds, don't just think about pixel drift. Everyone, or at least for a long time, I don't hear it too much anymore, but it was always like pixel drift, pixel drift, pixel drift. And it kind of always gave this impression that it just, all you had to have is the pixels moving. And I don't think it's just about that. We need to take into consideration physics, and that's the momentum thing. Like something's going to keep going, what it's doing, you know, unless another thing is acting upon it. And, you know, sort of the friction and gravity is what causing things to slow down, and that ease in or ease out, building up that momentum through the muscles engaging, but take into consideration those physics and, you know, the momentum and movement that you had previously established into your pixel drift. So you want the pixels to drift in relationship to what happened before, not just randomly. Another thing that I kind of notice as well, sometimes we start drifting into our next movement a little too early. So sometimes we'll put down that key on the first frame of that hold, that extreme key pose, and then we build one of those spacers 10, 12 frames later that's supposed to establish the ease out. But now we're having this character hit a pose and then drift out of it immediately instead of hitting that pose and holding it. So you want to make sure that you don't start moving into that next movement too early. Let that pose stay there in its location for the duration that you want it to. And then when the character is ready to move in that next direction, then start easing out. See if we can find some stuff in my shots just because I know them a little better. Cool, so this movement here is actually kind of a tricky moving hold. So he comes up and he hits into this pose. You know, this is kind of the key pose, somewhere around here. But with this one, so some of the things we talked about was making sure that that translation and rotation kind of move, that they both are engaged. So with this one, there's actually sort of three main motions because he's coming towards us and up, and then the rotation up as well. So you can see the head keeps rotating up throughout the duration of this move, you know, the camera eventually catches up to it. So it gives a bit of an optical illusion that it's not continuing up. But then not until he's ready to move into that next movement does he start rotating his head down. But during this whole move, that head is slowly translating towards us, up and rotating up. And it keeps going until you can see here where he starts to engage into the next emotion, then he starts going and moving down. And another thing you can kind of do to help with these areas where you're not really moving too much is offsetting things. So you can see here where my character really starts to get dead, and then his brows move, and then his head moves, and then his eyes move. See how those things really separate out. So this is actually a pretty tricky moving hold because it's mostly like growing towards camera and you have a subtle camera move. Cool, and you can see a similar thing here very subtly. A lot of these things you're going to be looking at are going to be really tough to see, but you can see him pull up into this pose, and he's just keeps drifting up until he's ready to actually start coming down, and then he starts coming down. And you can see again, head slightly translating up and rotating up very, very slightly.